The Egyptian pyramids are among the most impressive feats of engineering ever accomplished. They're huge, they're old, and we still don't know exactly how they were built. But one question we can answer is how many people built the pyramids. And in this video, we're going to try to find out just that. How many people built the pyramids and how long did it take? If you like stories like this, check out my podcast where I publish similar episodes. The best way to support the podcast is to support this channel. Hi everyone, I'm your host. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza, the oldest and biggest of the three pyramids at the Giza Plateau, which itself is just one of many, many more pyramids sprinkled throughout Egypt. Over the course of several hundred years, starting around 2680 BC, ancient Egyptians built dozens of these massive structures. But today we're just talking about the Great Pyramid because it's the biggest. So first things first, what makes a pyramid so hard to build? Well, for starters, there are lots of pieces. Just the outer layer of the Great Pyramid alone has over 2 million stone blocks, each of which weighs between 2 and 30 tons. And those are just the blocks that we can see. We don't even know how much of the pyramid is buried underneath the desert sand. The entire structure was originally over 480 feet tall. But the modern world isn't even that tall. That's 147 meters. And today, it stands at about 455 feet or 139 meters tall. So the pyramid was built up of millions of big rocks. But it would be a lot less daunting if they weren't constantly falling off the thing. In order to make sure the pyramid didn't fall apart before it was finished, each block had to be carefully placed with great precision. Each of the outer blocks had to be wedged perfectly into place, with only millimeters of space between them. Otherwise, the whole structure could easily collapse. So building a pyramid required not only a ton of people, but also a lot of precision and skill. For all of the latest information on the construction of the pyramids, it's important to rely on experts. Experts believe that there were two main periods of construction, or what they call pyramid building phases, that took place at the Giza Plateau. According to Mark Lehner, an archaeologist who worked at the Giza Plateau for over 30 years, the first phase took place during the reign of the pharaoh Khufu, who archaeologists believe ruled from 2580 BC to 2560 BC. This is the pharaoh whose pyramid this is. During Khufu's reign, the archaeologists believe that he built the first 125 feet or 38 meters of the pyramid. That's the base. So at this point, someone had to start laying the foundation, right? Not quite. Before the foundation could be laid, someone needed to go and get the foundation stones, carry them to the building site, set them up in the right spot, and then check to make sure they were level. Then someone needed to start putting the pyramid together by carrying stones from the foundation up to the top of the pyramid, placing them in a particular pattern and making sure they fit perfectly with their neighbors. And of course, there are millions of stones in a pyramid, so that's a lot of work. But wait, there's more. In addition to all of that, someone needed to haul water to the top of the pyramid to keep the limestone blocks moist so they would stay pliable enough to carve and shape. And speaking of carving and shaping, someone had to carve and shape all of those limestone blocks. And finally, someone had to come up with a plan for how the entire thing should look and then make sure everyone else followed it. At this rate, it sounds like it would take a small village, thousands of people to build a pyramid, but it turns out that's actually pretty close to reality. Let's go back to when the foundation of the Great Pyramid was being laid around 2580 BC. Around this time, Khufu was ruling over a kingdom that spanned across northern Africa, including modern-day Egypt and Sudan. It's estimated that his kingdom was home to around 5 million people, but only a small fraction of them would have been living in any given city. At the time, Memphis, Egypt's largest city, had a population of around 30,000 people. Even though it seems like everyone was working on the pyramid, only a small portion of the population would have been doing so at any given time. Scholars estimate that the workforce would have peaked at around 10,000 workers during the wetter months of the year, when other work was possible. But during the dry season, the workforce would have shrunk down to around 4,000 workers. This means that at its peak, the pyramid project would have employed less than 1% of the kingdom's total population. Let's say that you decided to go and build a pyramid today. You wouldn't be able to employ the entire population of Memphis because, well, it doesn't exist anymore. But you could employ the entire population of Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, Las Vegas has a population of around 640,000 people. If you were building the Great Pyramid today, you would need almost the entire population of Las Vegas to help you build it. We know that the workers who built the pyramids didn't come from just one city. They came from all across the kingdom. This means that every morning, before the sun rose, thousands of workers would leave their homes and travel to the building site. They would walk along dirt roads that ran from the north of modern-day Egypt all the way down to the Giza Plateau. On the way, they would stop at local towns and villages to pick up supplies and materials. Then they would continue on their journey to the pyramid. Once they arrived, they would settle in and begin their work for the day. The workers probably worked 6 days a week, taking only 1 day off to rest. They would work from before sunrise until after sunset, with a few hours off in the middle of the day to eat and drink. When they weren't working, they would sleep in camps near the building site. These camps were probably pretty crowded, with thousands of workers sleeping in tents or huts. Now let's talk about how long it took to build the pyramid. As we mentioned earlier, the pyramid was built in 2 phases. The first phase took place during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled from 2580 BC to 2560 BC. The second phase began with the next pharaoh, Khafre, who ruled from 2558 BC to 2532 BC. The second pyramid was never finished, but it came close to being as tall as the Great Pyramid. So it might seem reasonable to assume that it took about 20 years to build the Great Pyramid, since each phase of construction was about 20 years long. But that's not really the case. It turns out that the second phase of construction was actually started before the first phase was finished. This means that both pyramids were being built at the same time. Because of this, it's impossible to say exactly how long it took to build the Great Pyramid. But scholars estimate that it took around 40 years. That's based on the fact that it took about 40 years for Khufu's son, Khafre, to complete the remaining pyramids at Giza. So it's reasonable to assume that it took about the same amount of time for Khufu to build his own pyramid. That means that the construction of the Great Pyramid began sometime around 2600 BC and was completed around 2560 BC. Even though it took 40 years to build the pyramid, most of the work probably took place within a much smaller window. In fact, archaeologists believe that the majority of the pyramid was built during the reign of Khufu, who ruled for only 20 years. So there you have it. It took around 40 years, and the labor of thousands of people to build one of the world's most iconic structures. Now you know just how much time and effort went into creating the Great Pyramid of Giza. Hopefully, you enjoyed learning all about how many people built the pyramids and how long it took. Thanks for watching.